Shabbat Shalom and Mazel Tov on 100 years. Very impressive. It is such an honor to worship here with Rabbi Strasfeld and Rabbi Levitt, and of course my friend and cellmate, your current Rabbi, Lauren Gravel-Herman. I want to say Yasher Koach to Cantor Arbiter for that very quick move, saving the Torah from falling, especially this morning. That was very fast action. And it's always an honor to follow Rabbi Nadler, most certainly. Unlike the congressman, this is my first time at SAJ, but I will tell you, it feels like coming home. I feel I almost came up for an aliyah because I feel like a member, because what Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan and the founders of SAJ did 100 years ago this week has had a very profound impact on my life personally. The rabbi who officiated at my bar mitzvah some years ago was Rabbi Susan Talve, one of the first women ordained in the reform, at HUC. And the picture of my grandfather, stuck in some old ways, and an 8-month pregnant Rabbi Susan Talve with her first child officiating, and me at my bar mitzvah is one of the ones that just has shaped my life. The rabbi of my adult life, Rabbi Ellen Lippman, whose grandparents were amongst the founders of SAJ, is joining us on the Zoom. And Rabbi Lippman officiated at our wedding when we put the mezuzah in our house for both the naming and the bar and bat mitzvah of my son and daughter, and to have that tradition. And our Kolot Chayenu is our congregation in Brooklyn, where Ann Eisenstein, who is one of the descendants of Mordechai Kaplan, I think also worshiping with us today on the Zoom. And our current rabbi at Kolot Chayenu, Miriam Grossman, not only is she a graduate of the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College, but her father was in, as I understand it, the very first graduating class. So that tradition of Reconstruction in general, but boy, especially of strong feminist rabbis and leaders in our tradition, has shaped my life, has shaped most profoundly the life of my daughter Rosa, who we have a long way to go. And as we're thinking about the Supreme Court this week, the fight for full equality for women is a long way from achieved. But I will say this, thanks to the work that founders of SAJ and Rabbi Kaplan and that extraordinary set of rabbis and leaders over the years have done, my daughter got to grow up in a Jewish congregation where the idea that women are fully equal members of our Judaism, of our society in every single way, I really think is, like, for the first generation, a palpable expectation. And that is profound and comes to them from this work done 100 years ago. And I feel really very deeply grateful for and humbled by it. I also know that vision of what Reconstruction requires is not just a historical one. So we are called today to push ourselves and say, Rabbi Kaplan and folks at that time were both a little closer to the Orthodox traditions, having themselves learned in them, but also a little closer to the immigrant experience as Jews and the commands of justice and what they meant in their daily life. So there's some ways it's a little harder for us, the commandment to us to engage in those acts of learning and reconstruction and what justice requires. I think we have to be pushed a little harder. And boy, this pandemic, which has in so many ways exposed profound inequalities and injustices and cruelties in the way that we normally go about our business, calls for more from us. And our traditions offer thoughts about plagues, but they do not contain all the lessons for rising to them in ways that we could be proud of as Jews and as human beings. Now, I want to note that, Lauren, your work over the past year standing up with and for the men at the Lucerne as one way we think about what does it mean to respond to a plague in ways that insist on full equality and compassion, I think is in that spirit of Reconstruction, of pushing ourselves harder, even when it's uncomfortable. Yeah, we could clap for that, that's serious. But But it takes courage to kind of continue that act of reconstruction, and a lot more is required of us, because if we're serious about learning those lessons about what it means to have a city whose public health system is so unequal, whose public school system is so segregated, whose access to opportunities is so deeply unequal, just a lot more is required of us in the next 100 years. If we want to engage honestly with Israel and Palestine and be able to show our children a relationship to that place, that holy place that we spend so much time reading about, and yet also do what justice requires, honor the dignity and human rights and freedom struggle of Palestinians, then the ways that we engage in our work with Israel and Palestine in our Judaism, we are called, I believe, in Reconstruction and in our traditions, to deeply engage with our history and push ourselves harder than it is sometimes comfortable to go. And 100 years from now, when they're back at the 200th anniversary, they're going to look back on what we did in this time. And finally, that is so certainly true about the climate crisis, where we have some lessons in our traditions about how to treat and care for the environment, and some amazing groups like Dayenu are pushing us to do better. But boy, if we want to be looked back on 100 years from now and have people say they did what was necessary, then we will have not only to feel the celebration of the past 100 years, but push ourselves moving harder. So I just wanted to come here both to congratulate you and to pledge my partnership and support with you. I think maybe it's not a coincidence that we're reading Mishpatim this week, which amongst other things is sort of the pivot point from the story into the laws. Some laws we really are proud of and want to keep, like not oppressing strangers, and some laws that we want to let go of, like putting sorceresses to death. But I know that because we also have on the Zoom not just Rabbi Nadler, but Rabbi Messenger, and in the House, Gail Brewer and Mark Levine, the relationship between your elected officials and this congregation, I hope can be one of what I've learned from Rabbi Lippman as tochecha, of righteous rebuke, of real accountability. As I step into the role of Chief Accountability Officer, it is a mutual kind of accountability, the only way that we will hold ourselves to that vision of what this place is and what our city can, must, and should be, and what our religion teaches we must make it, is with that form of tochecha, of mutual accountability, grounded in love, but serious and honest in mitzvot of what is required of us. And it's with that spirit that I present you my very first commendation. This is my very first commendation as New York City Comptroller. It is such a deep honor to be with you and to celebrate with you this morning. Shabbat Shalom.